Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are stepping onto a very specific, very high pressure patch of pavement. We're looking at a world that I think a lot of people, they appreciate it from a distance.
Yeah, you see the clips online.
Exactly. You've seen a clip on YouTube of a silent drill platoon, or maybe you caught a glimpse of a high school JROTC team spinning rifles at a parade. But very few people actually understand the mechanics of it. We're talking about exhibition drill.
It is a fascinating subculture.
I
It
mean-
really is. And, usually when we talk about drill, we're focused on the performers.
Right. The spinning rifles, the silent commands.
That incredible snap of coordination. Yeah. But today, we're kind of flipping the script on that. We aren't looking at the performers at all. We are looking at the people holding the clipboards.
The judges, which honestly sounds a lot less exciting at first, but it turns out to be this whole universe. We are diving into the Drill Master Adjudication System, Volume 2, Judging Exhibition Drill. And frankly, before reading this, I thought judging was just, I like that, or that looked clean.
That was cool.
That was cool, exactly. But this document, this is not a rule book. It's practically a doctoral thesis on the philosophy of observation.
It really is. I was blown away. It's a treatise on how to objectively measure something that is, at its core, subjective.
Art, basically.
It's art.
Yeah.
And you have this central tension right at the start. How do you fairly judge art when that art is rooted in this, rigid military discipline?
That's it. You have the conflict between cool, which is the crowd reaction, the noise, the hype,
Visceral stuff.
and correct, which
Yeah.
is all about systematic achievement. And that's the hook for me, because we aren't learning how to merch today. Our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the entire mental framework of a judge.
Yeah.
We're learning how to see, how do you analyze these complex moving patterns in real time without letting your own biases or, your mood get in the way?
It's about cognitive discipline. It really is. The text makes it so clear. We aren't just counting dropped rifles. That's the most basic level.
Right.
We're analyzing something called design responsibility versus execution excellence. And that is a completely different way of watching a performance.
It feels like we're decoding a secret language here. So let's start with what the source calls the prime directive of judging. It's a phrase that pops up constantly. Rank before rate. Okay, let's unpack this. What does that actually mean on the ground?
Okay, so this is the foundational philosophy of the entire system.
Yeah.
It's the bedrock. Most people assume judging works like, a test in school.
Yeah, you see a mistake, you take off a point.
You see a mistake, you deduct a point. You see something good, maybe you add a point. And at the end, the score is the score. The Drill Master system says, absolutely not. That is the wrong way to do it. It will lead you to the wrong outcome.
Why? That sounds so logical. It sounds like how we grade everything else in life.
Well, it fails because of a cognitive bias, something called score anchoring.
Score anchoring.
Well, let's just walk through a scenario. Imagine you're a judge. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. The first team of the day comes out on the floor.
Okay.
They're pretty good. They're solid. Not amazing, but good. So you think, okay, that's a 90. You write down 90 out of 100. You have just anchored yourself at that number.
Okay, so 90 is my baseline for the day. Seems reasonable.
But what happens if the next 10 teams are all better than that first team?
Uh-oh.
You have only 10 points left to distribute among 10 superior teams. You've run out of room. You've run out of numbers. That's what the text calls compression.
You have nowhere to go. You end up giving scores like 91.1, 91.2.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the numbers become meaningless. You end up with these tiny arbitrary gaps between teams that had very different levels of performance, all because you locked yourself in at 8 a.m.
You've painted yourself into a corner with math. You trapped yourself before the day even really started.
That's the perfect way to put it. So rank before rate means your primary job isn't to come up with a number. Your primary job at every single moment is to answer one question. Who is leading right now and why?
So it's a constant comparison.
It's all comparative.
Yeah.
You physically place the teams in order, you're ranking them, and the score is just the paperwork you fill out later to reflect that order you've already established. The order is the truth. The score is just the symbol for that truth.
Wow. Okay, so the source mentions a specific tool for this, right? The tote sheet. It sounds like a grocery list, but the text treats it like a sacred artifact.
It is the judge's external brain.
Yeah.
Seriously. The text is incredibly strict about this.
Yeah.
The tote sheet is mandatory. It's a private working document, and you have to use it.
So what does it look like?
Imagine a piece of paper where you can physically move teams up and down a visual ladder. Team A performs, you make a mark, maybe you write a few notes. Team B performs. Now you ask yourself, are they better or worse than Team A?
Not what's their score, but just better or worse.
Just that simple question. If they're better, you put their mark above Team A. If they're worse, they go below. You don't give them a score yet. You just establish their relationship to the other teams that have performed so far.
So you're constantly shuffling this mental leaderboard, but it's on paper. It's fluid.
Precisely. You are building a hierarchy based on direct comparison, not some arbitrary number that you pulled out of the air early in the morning. And this leads to a really fascinating rule mentioned in the text. I love this one. It's the prohibition of the ghost competitor.
The ghost competitor. I love that term. It sounds like a mystery novel.
It's such a great term for a really bad habit. A judge cannot leave room for a team that isn't there.
Okay, what does that mean?
Let's say you're at a big national competition, and you know the defending world champions are scheduled to perform last at the end of the day.
Right, the heavy hitters.
The heavy hitters. So you might be tempted, as a judge, to score everyone else a little bit lower all day long, to save space for the champions, to leave room at the top.
You're judging against a memory or an expectation. You're saving the 100 for the team that hasn't even stepped off the bus yet.
Correct. You're judging a ghost. And the system absolutely forbids it. You judge only who is on the floor in that moment. If the first team of the day is absolutely amazing, you rank them high. You put them at the top of your tote sheet.
And you don't worry about later.
You can't. If the champions come out the end of the day and they aren't as good, they go below that first team. You cannot score against a ghost. You have to be present.
That actually connects to another really powerful point the text makes about authority. It's pretty blunt. Just because you were a drill sergeant or, a national champion back in 1990, that doesn't mean you know how to judge today.
Oh, yeah. That's the identity versus authority concept. There's a really strong warning in the text about relying on your resume.
Your past glory.
Your past glory, exactly. Being a great performer does not make you a great judge, just like being a great race car driver doesn't automatically make you a great mechanic. They're completely different skill sets.
One is doing, one is analyzing. They're related, but not the same.
Exactly. Authority in this system comes from alignment with the rules and from ethical restraint. It doesn't come from the rank on your uniform or the trophies in your basement. It's about your ability to apply the system fairly, not your ability to march.
Okay, so once you're in that headspace, you're ranking, not rating, you're not judging ghosts. You have to actually evaluate what's happening on the floor. And this is where the source introduces what it calls the engine of evaluation. It's this dichotomy between what and how.
This is the lens through which everything is seen. It's how a judge simplifies the absolute chaos of a performance into something they can analyze. Everything boils down to two questions: what did they do?
Yeah.
And how well did they do it?
Okay, break that down for me.
So the what is the design. It's the responsibility of the designer or the writer of the routine. The judge is asking, what was written? What is the content? What is the structure of this performance? Is it complex? Is it exposed? Is it difficult? That's the demand being placed on the performers. It's the architectural blueprint of the routine.
And the HOW is simply, did they pull it off?
Right. The HOW is all about execution excellence, control, clarity, uniformity, precision. And here is where it gets really, really interesting. The text says responsibility links design and execution. You don't just judge what and how W separately. You have to judge the relationship between the two.
Give me an example. What does that relationship look like when it's, broken?
Okay, so the book gives a couple of clear scenarios. Scenario A, you have a team attempting incredibly difficult, dangerous maneuvers.
Wow.
High ambition. They're throwing rifles over heads. They're doing blind tosses while sprinting across the floor.
Sounds exciting.
It is. But they are dropping rifles left and right. They're out of step. It's an absolute mess. That is a high what, but a low how.
High ambition, low control. As you said, they wrote a check they couldn't cash.
Exactly. And the text has a specific name for that: irresponsible design. The designer was irresponsible because they created a routine their team was not capable of performing.
So they get penalized for that, even though they were trying something difficult.
Yes. Now, conversely, you have scenario B. A team comes out and does very basic, safe movements, marching in a perfect square, doing simple port arms, but they're doing it with absolute robotic perfection. Every angle is perfect. Every step is together. That is a low what, but a high how goa.
Clean, but maybe a little boring.
Clean but limited achievement is the precise phrase the text uses, and the judge has to balance those two scenarios. You can't just reward the risk if the team fails spectacularly, and you can't just reward the cleanliness if the team didn't attempt anything difficult. It's all about that balance.
And there's a principle here that I found really compelling. It's called the gatekeeper principle, or sometimes readability. It basically says if you mess up the how above you bad enough, I can't even judge the what.
Yes, this is so important. The phrase is, failures in how constrain what?
Okay.
Imagine you write the most beautiful, profound poem in the world, but you write it in handwriting that is so messy, so illegible, that nobody can read the words. Does it matter how good the poem is?
No, of course not, because the design is completely lost. The message never lands.
Exactly. If the execution of a drill routine is so messy that the judge can't even see the pattern or understand the intent, the design gets zero credit. You could have the most brilliant idea, but if the performance is a train wreck, that brilliance is invisible.
So there's a specific rule mentioned about that,
Yeah, Box 5 execution cannot maximize Box 2 design.
which means
It means you can't drill your way out of a bad plan. You can be the best marchers in the world, the most precise, but if the routine itself is poorly designed, if it's simple or awkward or makes no sense, you will hit a scoring ceiling. And conversely, if the routine is brilliant but you can't march it, you hit a floor. The two are completely intertwined.
so we have the mindset, which is rank versus rate, and we have the engine, what versus HOW. Now let's look at the specific lenses they use to look at the performance. The text breaks it down into 4 captions. Let's start with the one that seems the most, I don't know, the most abstract. Overall effect, or OE.
Ah, yes. This is the one most people get wrong. The source says this is the most misunderstood caption in the entire activity.
I can see why. And the text spends a lot of time debunking myths here. It says effect is not crowd noise. It's not about entertainment. It's not about how loud the audience claps or screams.
Correct. That's a huge misconception. A judge is trained to ignore that. Overall effect is defined in the text as intellectual clarity and authority.
Intellectual clarity.
And it asks this very philosophical question. Does the performance mean what it presents?
It's deep. Mean what it presents. What does that actually look like?
It distinguishes between what it calls visceral effect and intellectual effect. Visceral is the stuff that hits you in the gut. Loud noises, fast spinning, aggression, screaming, that gets a reaction.
The cheap pop, as they say in wrestling.
The cheap pop, exactly. But intellectual effect is about cohesion. Does this routine make sense? Is there a beginning, a middle, and an end? Is the pacing logical? Is there a clear theme or idea being communicated? A loud, fast routine might score lower in overall effect than a quiet, controlled, thoughtful one if the loud routine is just, chaos for chaos's sake.
So a team that just comes out screaming and throwing rifles around might get the crowd super hyped up, but the judge is sitting there thinking, this has no cohesion. It's just a bunch of stuff happening.
Precisely. The judge is looking for that cohesion. If the routine lacks that intellectual through line, it lacks effect. It's just noise.
Okay. Next caption. Composition analysis, or CA. This seems to be purely about the design, the what.
This is the architecture of the routine, yes.
Yeah.
This is where the judge analyzes the blueprint, and the source has a great line here that I think is so important. Busy is not advanced.
I underlined that one. Just because you're doing 5 things at once doesn't mean it's good design.
Right. And that gets to this idea of simultaneity versus clarity. If you have 5 people on the floor all doing 5 different complex tricks at the same time, the judge literally doesn't know where to look. Their eyes being pulled in 5 directions. That's actually bad design. Good design directs the eye.
I see. But the book says the ultimate litmus test for composition is the transition. Why a transition? Why is that the big tell?
Because anyone can look cool
Yeah.
standing still or marching in a straight line or doing a static trick. But how do you get from point A to point B? How do you move from one formation to the next? The text says a bad transition is just walking without purpose.
Just moving to get to the next spot.
Right. There's no artistry to it. But a good transition actually prepares the next phrase. It sets up the next movement. It flows. It's the connective tissue of the routine. And if the transitions are weak or clunky, the whole composition just falls apart into a series of disconnected moments.
Okay, moving to the third caption. Movement, with the code MV. Now, this is drill, so movement seems pretty obvious, but the text is very, very specific about what this is not. It is not dance.
This is a critical distinction, especially as modern drill continues to evolve and incorporate other art forms. The text explicitly mentions what it calls the dance contamination rule.
Dance contamination, that sounds like a virus or something.
In the context of military drill, it kind of is. Judges are specifically instructed to ignore things like turnout, pointing your toes out like a ballet dancer, or extension,
Yeah.
or expressiveness in the traditional dance sense.
So all that stuff is just filtered out.
It's filtered out of the movement score. Drill movement is about functional authority. It's about physics. It's about weight transfer and command of space. It shouldn't look pretty. It should look authoritative. It should look powerful.
So if a judge sees a team doing, I don't know, jazz hands or pirouettes in the middle of a routine, they are supposed to essentially filter that out of this specific score.
That's the idea. Now, it might count towards overall effect if it fits a specific theme they're going for, but it does not count as drill movement. Movement is about military posture in physics. It's about moving mass with clear intent and control.
And the final caption, equipment, or EQ. This is the rifles, the swords, the flags, the hardware.
And again, it's not just a tally of tricks. It's not just sitting there with a clicker counting spins. The text emphasizes two key concepts, vocabulary and recovery.
Vocabulary, so the variety of tricks they do.
The variety and the quality, yes. But recovery seems to be an even bigger theme throughout the book.
It really does.
The text makes a clear differentiation between a hit and a drop. A hit is a bobble. You catch it, but it's clumsy. You have to adjust. A drop is a total loss of control. It hits the floor.
Right.
But what matters more than the error itself is the recovery from that error. Does the pattern of the drill continue seamlessly? Or does everything grind to a halt because one person dropped their rifle?
It's about protecting the visual argument, is what they call it. If you drop the rifle, you've broken the argument, the illusion is shattered.
Exactly. And patterns of error matter more than isolated mistakes. If one person drops once but recovers perfectly and the rest of the routine is flawless, that's better than a team that catches everything but looks terrified and clumsy the entire time. Control is more important than just not dropping.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, I want to move to something that felt less like an art class and more like a physics lesson. Segment 4, the physics of mass formation. This is chapter 12 of the text, and it outlines these 10 rules for moving large groups of people.
This is where we get into the really complex stuff. The Texas A&M style of drill, those massive shifting geometric blocks that seem to just melt and reform.
It looks like magic.
It looks like magic, but the text breaks it down into hard science. It's just geometry and physics.
And rule 1 is surprisingly simple, but also kind of profound. Not everyone moves.
It's the anchor principle. Yeah. It's so fundamental. The text says stability is structural. If everyone in a 50-person block moves at the exact same time, the audience and the judge loses their point of reference.
You don't know where the front is anymore, or the center.
Exactly. You have no idea what's happening. For a formation to look like it's transforming, part of it has to stay still. That static part provides a reference point for the part that is moving.
It's like an optical illusion. You need a stable background to see the movement in the foreground.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And then you have rule 4, which is a real mind bender. Direction change happens at a coordinate, not a command.
Wait, explain that. What does that mean?
In traditional marching, the commander yells, "Right flank, march!"
Yeah.
And everyone turns right at the exact same time on the command.
Okay.
In complex exhibition drill with interlocking forms, if you do that, you get collisions. That's chaos. So instead, the designer assigns a specific coordinate on the floor, a spot on the grid. The instruction is, when you hit that spot, you turn. It becomes automated. It doesn't depend on a voice command. It depends on geometry.
So that allows for that flowing, rippling effect where different people turn at different times?
Yes. And then rule 10 is what the book calls the secret sauce.
Yeah.
Modular design. The text explains that the secret to all that mind-blowing complexity isn't speed or having every single person do something complicated. It's running multiple simple systems in parallel.
So it's not as complex as it looks.
Well, it is, but the complexity comes from the interaction of simple parts. You don't have one giant block of 50 people doing one super complex move. You have 4 small blocks of 12 or 13 people doing simple moves, but they're interlocked and timed perfectly. To the audience's eye, it looks like chaos theory in motion. To the trained judge, it's just 4 simple modules running at the same time.
And the judge needs to know this because of this idea of certification versus judging.
This is a key ethical point for the judge. If a designer can't answer the simple question, who anchors this move, then the judge cannot properly evaluate it. If the judge can't see the underlying logic, they can't give credit for the difficulty. It just looks like a mess.
And that leads to this concept of reindexing.
Reindexing is the proof of work. It proves a move actually happened. If you have a block of cadets and they do a complex swirling move and they end up in the exact same shape they started in, did anything really happen?
Structurally.
Not truly, no.
Yeah.
Reindexing means creating a new front, a new shape. It proves that the move actually accomplished a structural change. It wasn't just decorative spinning.
This is fascinating because it turns the judge into almost an engineer. You're literally checking the structural integrity of the routine. But let's pivot from the physics back to the human element. Segment 5 covers risk, ethics, and this really interesting concept of instructional creep.
Yeah, risk is a big topic, and the takeaway here is really surprising and counterintuitive. The text states, in bold, risk is value neutral.
That feels so wrong. We're taught to applaud bravery, to reward taking a chance.
And in life, maybe we should. But in judging, according to this system, bravery is not a scoring category. If you attempt a quadruple spin rifle toss over your head and you drop it, you don't get points for trying. You lose points for failing.
So unmanaged risk is just a penalty. There's no upside.
Unmanaged risk is categorized as danger, but managed risk is absorbed difficulty. If you take that same risk, that quadruple toss, and you nail it, and more importantly, you make it look easy, that raises the score. But simply putting the risk in the routine does nothing for you if you can't control it.
It's that same principle again. Don't write checks your skills can't cash.
It all comes back to that.
Yeah.
And then we have this ethical trap, the trap of nostalgia. Chapter 16 specifically warns judges against nostalgia-based judging.
The old back in my day, we did it this way.
That is the enemy of fair adjudication. The text is so firm on this, judges cannot penalize a team for not doing it how we used to do it.
Yeah.
The art form evolves. You are judging the team on the floor today, not comparing them to your fuzzy memory of the 1990 national champions.
And along with that comes this other ethical rule, commentary discipline. This one made me laugh because I feel like everyone with any expertise does this. It's called instructional creep. Judges are strictly forbidden from teaching on their comment sheets or recordings.
It's so hard for them not to. You have to remember, many of these judges are former instructors, they're coaches. They genuinely want to help. They want to say, hey, if you just moved your hand 2 inches to the left on that catch, you'd get it every time.
But they can't say that. They're not allowed.
No. The text lists banned phrases. You should have. I would like to see. Next time, try to. All of that is forbidden.
But why? Why can't they help the kids out?
Because they are adjudicators, not coaches. Their job is to evaluate the outcome, not prescribe the process. So instead of saying you should spread out more, the proper comment is the spacing obscured the form.
Describe the problem, don't prescribe the fix.
Exactly. It keeps the judge neutral and objective. The second you start coaching, you're now personally invested in whether they take your advice. You lose your objectivity. Your job is to assess what happened, not what could happen.
That brings us to the summit, the top of the mountain, segment 6. The difference between being good, what the system calls box 4, and being truly world-class box 5. The text talks about this as the transition from good to great.
Yeah, and this is where the language gets very specific. Box 4 is defined as strong success. You did the job, you caught the rifles, you marched in a straight line. The routine was successful.
But box 5?
Box 5 is earned authority. It's a completely different level.
So what's the tangible difference? How does a judge see that?
The book calls it the independence factor. A unit enters box 5 only when the success is self-sustaining. The performers themselves own the responsibility for the performance.
So it doesn't look like they're just following instructions anymore.
That's it, exactly. In a box 4 performance, you can almost see the instructor's invisible hand guiding them. Okay, turn now. Okay, catch now. In box 5, the performers own the concept. It looks inevitable. It looks like it couldn't happen any other way.
And the text makes a specific distinction here between how armed teams and unarmed teams reach this level.
Yes, because the challenge is different. For armed teams, the equipment is structural to the performance. A drop in an armed exhibition routine breaks the visual argument immediately. It shatters that illusion of danger and control in a very obvious way.
But for an unarmed team, they can't drop anything.
Exactly. Unarmed is harder in a way because there is nothing to hide behind. The text says, movement precision is the readability gate. If you are unarmed, your body control is everything. You can't distract the audience with a cool spinning object. If your hand is 1 inch out of place or your foot angle is wrong, it's glaring.
So world class isn't just a cleaner version of A class. It's not just fewer mistakes.
No, absolutely not. It requires what the book calls conceptual ownership. The design itself is so strong and the performers are so in command that it can absorb minor errors without collapsing. If a true world-class Box 5 team makes a small mistake, they recover so fast and with such authority that you, the judge, almost question if it was a mistake in the first place. That is the definition of Box 5.
Authority. That word just keeps coming up over and over again.
It's the core of the entire system, from the judge's mindset to the performer's execution.
It really is. And as we wrap up here, I want to touch on the epilogue of the source text. It's short, but it's powerful. It talks about stewardship and integrity.
It's a heavy responsibility,
Yeah.
and the book doesn't shy away from that. The judge is the steward of the entire activity. If the judging is bad, if it's biased or lazy or based on nostalgia, the activity rots from the inside out. But if the judging is clear and fair and based on these principles, the activity grows and thrives.
And the final provocative thought the text leaves us with is this beautiful idea that true authority is demonstrated through restraint.
I love that line. It's so good.
And it applies everywhere. It applies to the judges. Don't coach, don't overscore, don't show off your knowledge on the comment tape. Just judge. But it also applies to the performers. The best drill isn't the fastest or the most frantic. It's the most controlled.
It's the discipline to hold back. To make something incredibly difficult look effortless, to be quiet when you could be loud, so that when you are loud, it actually matters.
And that's a lesson that goes way, way beyond the drill floor. Whether you're leading a meeting or raising kids or just trying to communicate an idea clearly, that core concept, that clarity and responsibility will beat flash and noise every single time.
Couldn't agree more. It's a universal principle.
So next time you see a drill team, maybe don't just watch for the drops. Look for the what and the how. Look for the transitions. And ask yourself, who is really in control here? Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
See you next time.